Hey, welcome to The Perspective today. I'm Mike Sherbino. Let me take you back 5, 6 years. There was a phrase that we never heard, but now we hear it almost every day. You see it on the news. You hear it in conferences. People refer to it as called mental health and being aware of it. We've talked about it on the program before, and we have some guests with us today who have been friends of mine for a number of years, and they're back again to talk about the mental health crisis that Canada is facing, but also they have a solution. And part of that solution has come out of their own story. You're not going to want to miss the program today as I share with you in just a moment the story of Allan and Bonnie Gallant. But first of all, I want you to know there's a number that you can call. It's 855-910-6297. Folks, I don't deliver pizza, but what we do offer is prayer. And that's way more important because we have issues. There is stuff that we go through, and many times the burden is too heavy. So I'd love for you to call that number at any time, 24/7. There are people there to pray with you, to encourage you in this journey called life. And sometimes the journey called life hits a brick wall. And by saying that, I want to welcome Allan and Bonnie. Glad you're here today.
Thanks, Mike.
We've shared a lot of laughs, a lot of meals together, a few chicken wings, some pizza. Still got the pizza left on your jacket from the other night, Allan. No,
Sorry.
I'm kidding. And how did you end up with such a beautiful wife?
I was blessed by God.
Okay.
I paid him to say that.
You paid him to say that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, we're doing a little bit, with Valentine's Day in the rearview mirror, we can learn some good comments to carry us through. Tell us a little bit about what you did for most of your life as a couple. And you met at a Bible college, or you went to a Bible college together, you went into ministry. What was that like? And then eventually, after many years, boom, crashed.
Yeah.
Tell the story.
Well, we met. I was 13. She was the age of 15 when we met. And that was at a
You
Bible
probably
camp.
shouldn't have said that.
But she didn't like me.
Understandable.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that. But we grew up together. We're married, and then we went to Bible college. And I graduated from a Bible college in New Brunswick. And so we married and went into ministry right away after I graduated and began to pastor. I started as a youth pastor and worked myself up to church planter at the end. But
Fantastic. But
yes.
it wasn't all roses, was it, Bonnie?
Oh, it's never all roses in ministry.
Yeah.
Well, the fact you have 5 kids,
I was just going to say, in all that, we decided to have 5 children.
Yeah.
So,
well, we didn't decide to have 5.
No, God decided.
I wanted 1.
Yeah. I always say, or Allan goes, he had 5 children, I have 6, because, no slant on a man, but, we have to kind of help bring them up
6?
too.
You got to bring them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So God bless us with 5 children.
And you're still trying to raise your 6th.
Yeah.
I am. He will not leave the nest.
Okay. From Cape Breton.
Yeah.
We are. I'm proud of it.
Born and raised.
And I bet glad you don't live there now unless you had an extra snow shovel.
Oh,
God.
man. It's
Snowmageddon or something.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It's really
Okay.
crazy.
But we got to get ahead because there's a powerful story that we want to unpack today. Tell us a little bit from your perspective first, how you moved ahead, and tell us about the brick wall, Bonnie.
Wow, the brick wall. Sometimes the brick wall still seems to be there. Okay. When Allan will share his story about having a stroke, and the stroke was, we always say, the easy part. The hard part was the mental health breakdown. And if anyone suffers with mental health or knows of someone that suffers with mental health, I believe the brick wall remains. It's learning how to navigate the brick wall. Yeah. It doesn't have to seem so immense, but you learn how to climb it and move forward as you are facing that brick wall. So being his caregiver, I still continue to be his caregiver.
Let me pause there. When you say caregiver, talk to us about the stroke that you had.
So I wasn't well for many years. My blood pressure was high. I was under a lot of stress, burnout, so many different factors. But in July of 2017, I had a stroke that should have killed me. And but God was gracious, got me to the hospital, and I began to recover. But that was the best day in my life and the worst day in my life. The worst was the stroke itself, because it was very scary. I didn't know if I was going to function normally again. And the best part was because God was in it, and he began to restore a broken soul. That was part of why the stroke happened to me. I was in a very bad spot mentally, emotionally,
And we
and
were too,
spiritually.
even as a couple.
Yeah.
We were at the point, or I know I was at the point of thinking, I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
I had a very good job, good paying job. And I just felt that Allan wasn't the same as what he was
And I
when we first
wasn't.
got
I
married. And he
wasn't the
wasn't the
same.
same. Our kids will say the same thing. And so even those thoughts were going through my head that I can do this on my own. So it was not a good place for us back then.
Yeah.
And one of the big side effects of the stroke was not so much paralysis, but it affected your vocal cords.
It did. So the stroke was right in my speech area of my brain. So it's not uncommon for people to lose their speech, but they get back pretty quickly. But because where the stroke was, it took away my ability to say anything. And I had to go to rehab and learn to say the simplest words and phrases. And now it's been over 6 years. I have aphasia, so a disconnect from here to my voice. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I know he gets weary and trying to think of words, but I always say, I have a hard job too, because I'm always paying such close attention to him that he finds the right words. So I said, I think for you and for me, so I'm exhausted.
But you know what?
You should make double the pay.
I think so too. The pay is awful.
But it triggers her when I get tired and my voice gets very weak. And because it takes us back to the stroke and to the mental health breakdown that I had, right? So it's still a trigger for her.
Absolutely.
I remember the first time I met you and you told me you're from Cape Breton.
Yeah.
I just figured it was your accent because I've lived on the East Coast and,
I
I'm going to
know.
tell you there, boy, I understand how they talk because they have that twang, don't they?
Yeah.
Just
there
a
you go.
little.
But it's interesting. My voice came back, not the best and not like before, but people think I'm from Quebec. They think I have this French English accent, eh? But I don't.
Bonnie, a lot of times our empathy and our sympathy goes towards the person who has had the stroke or whatever it is. But the caregiver is a whole different kettle of fish.
Absolutely.
Talk to us from that perspective, because many people watching today are caregivers.
And it's been something that people have asked me about. And I think, haven't really entertained how difficult it really was. I know for me, I just kind of put myself into this box of, I can do this. I have to be strong. I have to be strong for Allan, and I had to be strong for my children. So I didn't want them to see any weakness on my side. And part of my personality is I can do this on my own. So I wasn't wise enough to call in help for me because all the emphasis really was on Allan. And it was like, I'm fine. I can do this. But it wasn't until about 2 years after Allan's stroke that I always say my world came tumbling down, when I realized how much it actually took out of me to care for him, to continue to work, to bring an income in.
Because I couldn't.
Right. And making sure my kids were okay too. So a caregiver, you need to have the supports. You just can't do it on your own. You can. I tried. I had some people that obviously came around me. It wasn't like, I always would feel awful if someone said, I want to bring you over a meal. Oh, no, that's okay. I can do this because I like to cook and do those things. So to have to depend on someone else was a little bit out of my comfort zone. So that was, I guess, my issue more than anything. But I always say, we say it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to care for someone who is either struggling mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We need to come around and be the hands and feet for each other.
That's a very good segue, just before we go to the break, because that really started to birth something within both of you.
Yeah.
In 30 seconds, tell us what that was. We're going to come back after the break and talk about it.
So we were asking God what's next, and He showed us that the church wasn't equipped enough to really understand mental wellness and mental illness, and they didn't have enough resources. Many pastors and leaders don't know where to turn, especially in Christian resources. So our ministry, Agora Network Ministries, was founded on our crisis because the church didn't know how to help us, and now we're trying to help the church to help their people.
And we're going to come back and talk more about that in just a couple of moments. Agora Network Ministries is impacting hundreds of churches across Canada. We're so excited about that. I want you to stay tuned because Bonnie and Allan are going to help unpack the current mental health crisis that we're dealing with right now, that's facing us smack dab in the eyes every day on the news. You're listening to The Perspective. The phone number to call if you'd like prayer or encouragement is 855-910-6297. I'm Mike Sherbino. We'll be right back after this short break. I'm so glad you're with us today on The Perspective, and I am equally as glad that Allan and Bonnie Gallant are with me. Guys, thank you for coming on. We've shared a lot of laughs, a few tears together as well, and you have helped me so much to understand the mental health crisis and struggle that people are going through. Even as a pastor of a church, I struggle with saying, how do we equip the church? How do we respond to the crisis? How bad is the crisis?
No, the crisis is getting worse. Right now, 1 in 5 people have a mental illness. I think what we have to understand is everybody has mental health. And sometimes our mental health is affected by our circumstance. But when I say 1 in 5, I mean 1 in 5 people are diagnosed with an illness that affects not only them, but their families and others around them. So that is always a big number.
And the suicide rate is skyrocketing.
It is. Right now in Canada, it was 1 in 11 people a day. Now it's 12 people a day. And a couple of stats a few years ago said 9 out of 10 people that die every day by suicide is related to a mental health illness or a disorder of some sort. So even in Niagara Falls, here in the Niagara region, it's one of the highest suicide cities among North America, because a lot of people go to the falls and they jump, and many of them struggle with mental
a lot is
illness.
not
It's heartbreaking.
reported.
It is. It is.
What goes through your mind as a woman when you hear the phrase mental health? How do you see it, Bonnie?
Years ago, Mike, I was scared to death of the word mental health. I really thought mental health was that you had to be, pardon the word, crazy. But as we've journeyed through this, I've realized how important, as important it is to be spiritually healthy and physically healthy, we need to be mentally healthy. I'll share a little personal note with you today. Today I'm really struggling. And this would be something I would never had acknowledged in the past. But as we spoke about caregiving and things, I knew I had my niece a good support. And I just said to her, could you pray for me today? My spirit is low and I don't know why. And I knew I could count on her. So I think sometimes even in our own mental health, it could be as simple as that. Like, I'm having a low day. I don't have a mental illness, but I am having a low day. So having that network around you to call out to, certainly when you feel weak, they, they gotcha.
Well, that transparency is so powerful. Thank you, because a lot of times we just try to suck it up, don't we? To
Yeah.
pretend like it's okay.
Yeah.
And you did that for years.
I did.
And then
Yeah.
finally,
I couldn't hide it anymore. And the stroke didn't help, but it really it broke a dam in my brain.
Yeah.
And I was a mess, all of the trauma that I went through, either as a child or in ministry or just as a person. I couldn't deal with it, and it was very intrusive and dark. Yeah.
just before you came into the studio today to record, you drove quite a ways.
Yeah, I
You had a
did.
meeting with a bunch of pastors and leaders
Yeah.
in a city.
Yeah.
Actually in Simcoe, Ontario.
Yeah.
So those, shout out to Simcoe if you're there. What was the ethos of that meeting? Is
Yeah.
surprise, shock, leaders saying, help us? What do
Yeah,
you
so
encounter?
so we invited many pastors and ministry leaders from that area to come. Unfortunately, only a handful came. But as I was talking to one of the pastors that came, he said, "We're here because we see the importance of it."
Mm.
And that's a key, because many still don't see the importance of taking care of your mental health. Because, Mike, if you don't take care of your mental health, it's going to affect your spiritual health, or the other way around too. If I don't take care of my spiritual health, it will affect my mental health. So it's linked together. We have to be holistic in our approach. So, they were there because they wanted to be educated, and they wanted to learn the resources, and they want to be aware and equipped. How do we equip our churches to be mental health aware and friendly? What does that look like?
Mm.
I'm going to come back and ask you more about that in a minute,
Yeah.
because you also have a new phone app
Yeah.
and all sorts of resources.
Yeah.
Bonnie, when you watch Allan,
Mm-hmm.
you've been very vulnerable today. When you watch Allan and he seems to be, what's going over the edge? Maybe that's not the right phrase, but
No, it is.
I think we're just being honest.
Yeah.
What would you say are some healthy guidelines that you would give to viewers today to say, here are some things you need to do to stay healthy?
Well, Allan is on medication, and so he does take meds for many reasons, and some for his mental health. So this is just a little example. He just thought he could look after himself and come off his meds. And I noticed a difference in him. This would be probably about a month, 6 weeks ago. And I kept saying, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm fine." But I knew different because
Typical guy, eh?
yeah, I'm fine. But I knew different because he was slipping back to being like the old Al.
Mm.
Very anxious, irritable, impatient. And then finally, he confessed his sin to me. And
That
said,
wasn't good, Mike.
no, it wasn't good. And told me that he had come off his meds. And so we had
Confession is good for the soul.
it is, yeah. So we had one of those, a little bit of a heated
You had a warm conversation.
We had very
That's
warm.
what we have in our
very
home.
warm.
I just listened.
Yeah, he did. He said he was so nervous he went into the bedroom and laughed because I scared him so much. Anyway, so that would be one advice. If you're on medication, stay on your medication.
Yeah.
Don't think that you can wean yourself off them without, obviously, doctors'
Get help.
help. Yes.
I've heard this before, so thank you.
What
else?
Very important.
What else?
I think just taking time for yourself is still an okay thing. I know we often think that taking time for ourselves when we're Christians is unspiritual. But I think setting the time alone or together as a couple, knowing your limits, knowing your boundary. I've run my life basically driving an 18-wheeler. And through my own counseling, I've realized I'm actually a smart car. Maybe not a smart car, but, a smaller car. And my load and my capacity is not the same as it was when I was younger. And so we're learning that and learning that dance together, that our load and capacity isn't the same. So it's okay to know when to say yes and probably when to say no. They're okay to do.
That's helpful.
Alan. But just serotonin is so important. And serotonin, we think is in the brain, but it is made in the gut. So what I want to say is, eating right
Yeah.
is so important to
We're working on
maintain.
that one.
I thought you were saying Sarasota, Florida, but that
That
would
would
help.
even be a plus.
We're almost out of
Yeah,
time.
sorry.
Tell us about your website. Give it to us.
Yes.
Tell us what people are going to find there.
Yeah, so you'll find resources like we have an Agora Academy online and in-person courses for you personally. And then we have day seminars that will help equip the church and make it user-friendly for mental health. And then we have conferences that will help you reach into your community with mental health resources and supports. What I am excited about, we just launched our new phone app, and we're going to be pushing resources, events.
We have
losing my train of
podcasts,
podcasts, blogs,
blogs.
The
and
whole enchilada.
all of this stuff. So if people go to Agora Agora, capital CAN, on Google Play or Apple, they can download that and log in, and then they can get a number of good resources for their health.
Just want to say thank you both for coming on the show, for
Our
being real.
pleasure.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
Love what
You
you're
too.
doing.
Thank
And
you.
we're going to be pushing your ministry because I know it helps people.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We're glad you're watching The Perspective. Stay with us. I'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Ryan Walter. I played a little bit in the NHL. We do lots of leadership development right now. And have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Harry Houdini? Love this guy. He was an escape artist. He used to escape out of jails. One jail he couldn't get out. Just one caught him inside. Guess what they did? They didn't lock the door. He believed that the door was locked. You know, it's interesting. Belief is important, right? Jesus said, "Do not fear, just believe."
I'm convinced that nothing is more important in this life than encouragement. The word of an encourager helps you to get up when you feel like just getting down and lower. It helps you to rise up above circumstances. It helps you to press on. It gives you hope. It was the writer of yesteryear, Mark Twain, who once said that he could go a whole month on one word of encouragement. And as wonderful as that is, personally, I would prefer 4 or 5 a day. You know, send those texts. You can write to me, prayer@theperspective.tv, and encourage me. I'd love to hear from you. I need encouragement. I know that people need encouragement. Your children need encouragement. Your spouse does. The friend that you work with, your colleague, we all need encouragement. You know, the Bible actually says to encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. It also says, but encourage one another daily as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. We'll come back and reflect on those verses in a moment, but I want to take you to the Old Testament. It's in 1 Samuel 23 and verse 16. And there we have a story where King Saul had a son, Jonathan. Jonathan and David were best buddies. They did everything together. They really loved each other. They supported each other through thick and thin. But Saul was jealous of David. He thought that David was going to take over the kingdom, and he wanted to end his life. So David runs for his life, and he's hiding in caves in different places. He's at wit's end corner. Here is the king of the most powerful nation on earth, tracking him down like a hunter would track down a deer in the bush. But it says that Jonathan, Saul's son, went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. Don't be afraid, he said. Don't be afraid. Powerful words. And if you were to read the rest of the passage, it says, don't be afraid. Even my father Saul knows that you will be king. You know, as we think about the power of encouragement, we need it mostly when we're in those difficult times to press on, to hold the fort, to not give up. And encouragement helps you to keep going when everything else just falls apart. Have you ever spoken a word of encouragement to somebody? Maybe it's a word to cheer up. Maybe it's to a son or daughter who's not done well on the exams, and rather than saying, did you not study hard enough, to say, you know what? How can I help you to get better prepared for the next time? Thank you for trying as hard as you did. Thank you for pressing on. It's amazing how we can twist words because the tongue has the power of life and death. Matter of fact, some of our words invite people to die rather than to live. And we have that great opportunity to speak hope into people's lives. How do we do that? Well, it's what Jonathan did when he came to David. He reminded him that David had been anointed, that he was to be the next king. He said, you will be the next king, and even my father Saul knows that. He didn't say, cheer up, things are going to get better, because actually things got worse for David. But he reminded him of the promises of God. And so can I speak a word of encouragement into your life today? Maybe you're feeling you don't know what to do. You're just overwhelmed with life. Well, the Bible says that God is our refuge and strength. He's a present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Some of you are walking through dark valleys, maybe even that valley of the shadow of death. Remember the words of David, who actually would write, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And I love the promise that Jesus gives to us through the pen of the Apostle Peter in 1 Peter 5, verse 7, where he says this, we can cast our cares on him because he cares for us. Find strength in the promises of God. And as you are thinking about God's promises in your life, speak a word of encouragement, speak a word of hope to people who desperately need it, and to even the people you don't think need it. Who knows, your word can change the direction of the life they're going in. If you're struggling with mental health, and we all have mental health issues in various degrees, don't walk alone. Get yourself connected to a church, to a place where you can confide in people, to build friendships, and don't live in isolation. God calls us to be in community. He calls us to be part of his family. There's a verse of scripture says how wonderful it is when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity. There's a reason for that, because we need each other. You can check out Agora Network Ministries. You can check out our website as we will be sharing about what Allan and Bonnie are doing. And until the next time we're together, may you know God's peace and joy in your life today.